So I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you all today. Obviously, this is about a lawsuit that's been filed in South Florida. Several cities, their city commissions, their mayors have all joined in as plaintiffs against the governor and legislature. I think the attorney general's named, chief financial officer, the auditor general, the commissioner of agriculture, all of whom have some say or impact over enforcement of the punitive penalties that are contained within this particular statute. And so, I'm here to announce that I'm going to be joining in as a plaintiff. I know Joe Patner, one of our city attorneys, has been speaking with council members to gauge their interest in also joining in. My hope is that some or all of council will also join in as a plaintiff, along with authorizing the city to be a formal plaintiff. The concern that I have, and I think we need to be very clear about this lawsuit is not attacking the ability of the state to do a preemption. It is not attacking the ability of the state to legislate or guns or ammunition or the components. This lawsuit is attacking the provisions contained within the statute, which are punitive in nature and are, I think, some of the most draconian provisions in state law of any state in the country, and really prevent us as those who have to try and follow the law from even questioning provisions in the law that we don't understand or aren't clear or are too broad or we think might be unconstitutional. It puts us individually at risk from our careers and financially at risk, and that just isn't right. Maybe it's coincidental that today I'm making this statement on a day that's National Pet Day. And I say it's coincidental because I think, for years, certainly when this was passed and continuing through today, our governor and legislature have been really the lapdogs of the NRA, so it's kind of fitting that I'm challenging it today.
What do you hope this lawsuit does?
Well, I hope it finds that these provisions are unconstitutional, because I believe they are. They certainly provide a chilling effect that for whether it's a city, a county, a mayor, a commissioner, from reading a statute and saying, well, wait a minute, what is this saying? Because I was thinking or considering taking this action on behalf of the residents of my city, and if I do, I could be removed from office doing that, even though I think it's what my city wants to see happen, our constituents want to see happen. And that's just not good policy.
Did you have what happened across the bay with Commissioner Miller?
No. When I heard this lawsuit was filed, my immediate response was to contact the city attorney, Jackie Kovalarich, and ask her to take a look at it. And her and Joe Patner, I know, sat down, read through it, and then briefed me on their thoughts on it. I read through it. And after hearing from them and reading it myself, and I've practiced law for 27 years before I became mayor, I felt it was a very well drafted, well written, and that the complaint has absolutely has merits to it, and I feel confident.
What's your anticipation on other major cities in Florida taking part in it? I mean, there's been Miami, there's been St. Petersburg. We haven't heard from Orlando, Tampa, Jacksonville.
I know I've spoken with my friend across the bay, Mayor Buckhorn. I know he's looking at it from the same perspective. Our concern is that if they're doing it in this instance, in this particular preemption, and Lord knows we had at least 5 to 10 that were filed this session, what are they going to come back and look like next year if they bring them back? And are they going to contain provisions like this in the next iteration? And where does it end?
This comes 2 days after the governor announced a run for Senate. Some might think it's political in nature. How would you respond to that?
No, the only politics of it is that this policy is bad politics. It's bad policy. It just so happens that this governor signed it into law. And so, that's why he's named, and it's his duty under this preemption If it's been violated, he's the one who's supposed to remove you from office. That's why he's named as a plaintiff. So it wouldn't matter who the governor was, they're going to be named as a plaintiff for having executed and signed the bill into law and then following through on enforcing it.
What's the timetable?
Go ahead.
What's the timetable on the lawsuit?
Joe, I don't know if you have any.
We'll be looking to intervene. Can you come into the mic, please?
Come on.
We'll be intervening into this suit probably in the next several weeks. It is a brand new lawsuit. It was filed on April 2nd. Timetable from there, as you know, wheels of justice don't really move all that swiftly, but we'll be intervening into the suit on the mayor's behalf and perhaps on the city and other individual council members within the next couple of weeks.
Have you guys been monitoring what's going on in Leon County? They're actually going to try to push their own gun laws up there. Have you guys been looking at that and looking at what they're doing?
Yeah, I mean, there's been a number of cities around the state that have contemplated enacting ordinances that would in some way, regulate firearms or ammunition or their components. We on advice of our council have not done that because we've recognized that these provisions, even if we believe there are provisions of that preemption that are unconstitutional, simply challenging them exposes us to risk. This is a way of not challenging the preemption itself, but of challenging the provisions within the preemption that we feel are unconstitutional.
Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
All right. I have a two-part question. First of all, can you tell us any changes you would like to see specifically in the city of St. Petersburg? And then secondly, what would you have to say to gun shop owners within the city limits?
So certainly, I mean, if I didn't have a preemption that was preventing me from moving forward with recommendations of policy to council, I think we would absolutely take a look at banning military-style weapons, that we would take a look at high-capacity magazines, armor-piercing bullets, bump stocks, the background checks, which would all be lovely, except I can't do any of it. If I even tried to do an executive order or a rule or a regulation of any kind, not even an ordinance that council passes, I could be removed from office, civilly fined, and sued.
Any concern for any kind of political or financial retaliation from the state by even being a part and being named in this suit?
Stand up for what you think's right, and there is clearly an attack on local governance that's going on right now, it's very difficult for me to accept someone in a very rural city that's a legislator that's trying to make policy based on their experience in their community for an urban city, one of the largest cities in the state, where the living circumstances are very different.
What's your word to gun shop owners in the city limits, though, today, who might not be happy with your ideas?
Oh, if you look at what the national polling is, gun owners, gun shop owners aren't necessarily opposed to common sense gun restrictions. We're not talking about taking people's guns away from them under the Second Amendment. I have no problem with the Second Amendment, but I find it hard to understand the need for armor-piercing bullets or things that are weapons of war. Why private individuals need to have weapons of war in their hands.
If I'm not mistaken, just a week and a half ago, that shooting in South St. Petersburg, was that not, the police alleged, I believe, that an AK-47 was used?
I believe there was.
I mean, is that part of...
I mean, that should be a concern to all of us living in this city and any city, any community around this country, is the proliferation of military-style weapons that have one purpose only, and that's to kill.
How important is it that the city can make its own laws, regarding guns, and not have that left up to the state? We've seen as the state has restricted a lot of local cities' abilities to do several things.
Well, yeah, there was a bill that was proposed that would restrict our rights regarding bike share, regarding tree trimming, CRAs. We look at our CRA as an example. South St. Pete CRA has had a huge impact on South St. Petersburg, and we are really starting to make progress at our efforts at reducing poverty. prohibiting us from having control or say over a CRA could undo all the positive things that we've been able to, and steps we've been able to take. So this isn't just about guns. I mean, that's the thing I think that's really important, and I don't want to get lost. What this lawsuit is about are provisions in a preemption that are so draconian and punitive as to cause and prevent anyone from ever being able to challenge them, even if we believe they're unconstitutional.
Mayor, do you see a difference in guns between something like CRAs, where a CRA is obviously contained in the city, but if you were to ban bump stocks, I could still go to Pinellas Park and get a bump stock and bring it back here. Yeah. So is that not better regulated by the state because of that?
No. I mean, you know, every community is different. There are times, and I'm not going to say that there aren't times when a preemption makes sense. There are times when preemptions do make sense, but communities are different, and the desires of communities differ from community to community, and what may be appropriate. And I'll use the backyard gun range as a great example. If you live in a rural community, when your backyard and your next door neighbor is a mile away, having a gun range in your backyard is not a big deal. But tell that to the people who lived in Lakewood Estates. It was a big deal. And so that was an example of where what works in one community sure doesn't work in another one.
You talking about the one several years ago?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
What are you hearing about the likelihood that you have a good argument?
I feel very confident, you know, just again, from my own experience practicing law, from the advice of our city attorneys, I think this is a very well-drafted complaint. The merits of the complaint, I think, are very strong, and I'm going to be very anxious to see, you know, how the court rules on these as this makes its way through the process.
Have you heard from the governor at all?
No,
Have you talked to him?
I have not, no.
Have you had conversations with other council members? Do you think many more will join in with you?
I know legal staff, the city attorney's offices have been meeting with council members and to advise them, you know, what this, because council's interested too in this lawsuit, what it says. There's been a lot of frustration by council members that's been expressed over our inability to have any say over what happens in our community on this issue and on a whole host of issues. I mean, council was paying very close attention this legislative session to every one of those preemption bills that was working its way through to see what the end result would be, and obviously this bill impacts future preemptions pretty dramatically.
You mentioned the need to do the right thing. Why do you say that this is the right thing to do, and why is this so important to you?
Well, I think, you know, in our state constitution there's a provision about home rule, and the legislature certainly more recently has been chipping away at the home rule authority of cities and counties. You know, and you know, when you look at them individually, you could say, all right, well, they're just doing it here or they're just doing it there. But then I try and look at things collectively, and what I see is a collective effort at taking away our home rule authority, and that's troublesome. And I also find it incredibly ironic. And remember, I spent 6 years up there, and so I heard it constantly from them. We continue to hear it, where the Florida legislature complains about Washington telling them what to do, and what they always say is, we know better than Washington what's good for our state. But they don't seem to have any problem telling us, the cities and counties, what to do, as if they know better what's better for our cities and counties than we do, those of us who are elected and closest to the people. It's just incredibly ironic.